Yeah, good morning, dear students. In the previous class, we have discussed a few points under the title on defining language. Okay, let me continue. In the last point in the previous class, we discussed is language articulation. This is the point we discussed. This is the last point we discussed in the previous class. The idea gains support from the notion of language articulation. In Latin, the word articulus means member, part, subdivision in a sequence of things. As regards language, articulation may refer to the division of the chain of speech into syllables. Articulation may refer to the division of the chain of speech into syllables. Okay, so the speech can be considered as the chain of syllables. Okay, so this articulation may refer to the division of those syllables. Okay, as a chain of speech. Okay, or to the division of the chain of meanings into meaningful units. Okay, even the meaning is also considered to be the chain of meaningful units, right? So here we can understand that it is not the spoken language which is natural to man, but the faculty of constructing a language, that is a system of distinct signs corresponding to distinct ideas. Right now, so further we can discuss. We shall discuss the remaining points in this topic today's class. Broca discovered that the faculty of speech is localized in the third frontal convolution of the left hemisphere of the brain. Okay, Broca, he discovered, okay, neurologist, he is a neurologist, he discovered that the faculty so he discovered that the faculty of speech is localized in the brain at the third frontal convolution of the left hemisphere of the brain. Okay, yeah, there is some experiment uh, that discovery is the result of a particular incident what happened, and because of that incident, he found that the speech, the faculty of speech, is localized in the left hemisphere, especially at the third frontal convolution. Okay, so finding this fact, okay, the same localization is known to hold for everything connected with the language, including writing. Okay, the same localization is known to hold for everything connected with language, including writing. Thus, what seems to be indicated when we take into consideration also the evidence from various forms of aphasia due to lesions in the centers of localization is first point that the various disorders which affect the spoken language are interconnected in many ways with the disorders affecting the writing language also. The various disorders which affect the spoken language are interconnected in many ways with the disorders affecting written language. Okay, if the if the areas that are that related to the spoken language or disorder have some disorders, then surely those various disorders which affect this spoken language are interconnected in many ways with the disorders affecting written language. Okay, the disorders that affect the spoken language are interrelated or interconnected with the disorders that affect the written language. Written language. This is what the truth. Okay, another point, another fact is that in all cases of aphasia or agraphia, what is affected is not so much the ability to utter or inscribe this or that. Okay, what is affected is not so much the ability to utter or inscribe this or that, but the ability to produce in any given mode signs corresponding to normal language. Okay, so in case of that aphasia, in case of that agraphia, okay, so what is affected is not so much the ability to utter or inscribe this or that. So all this leads us to believe that over and above the functioning of the various organs, there exists a more general faculty governing science. From the above two facts, we can understand. Even from Broca's ideas, we can conclude that all this leads us to believe that over and above the functioning of the various organs, there exists a more general faculty governing science, which may be regarded as the linguistic faculty par excellence. Linguistic faculty. There it is believed that there is a general faculty which governs this science, that is called linguistic faculty. Linguistic faculty in our brain. Finally, in supporting of giving linguistic structure pride of place in our study of language. Okay, there is this argument that whether natural or not, the faculty of articulating words is put to use only by means of the linguistic instrument created and provided by the society. Okay, there is this argument, that is, whether natural or not, the faculty of articulating words is put to use only by means of this created, linguistic instrument that is created and provided by society. Okay, therefore, it is no absurdity to say that it is linguistic structure which gives language what unity it has. Okay, that linguistic instrument created and provided by the society, okay, it is no absurdity to say that it is the linguistic structure. It is the linguistic structure which gives language what unity it has. Language has unity. That unity is given by the linguistic structure. That unity is given by the linguistic structure, right? This is what we can say on defining a language. Okay, dear students, we have discussed many points under this. Okay, we discussed different viewpoints. Okay, such as articulated syllabus and auditory impressions and speech sounds and thought, and that individual aspect of language and social aspect of language, and we discussed established system and evolution. Based on these points, we can conclude that there is a dual nature of this language, but only one unique nature which is independent is that the linguistic structure. Okay, so in the study of language, we have to focus on linguistic structure. And with this argument, okay, by referring Whitney's and Whitney's ideas, he discussed how he resected, or how those ideas may be resected based on his argument. And then finally, we came to know that the central, even the linguistic structure, is the only the thing which gives language what unity it has. Okay, so our object of study will be more clearly the study of linguistic structure. The study of linguistic structure. So next point we have to move is linguistic structure. Its place among the facts of language. Linguistic structure is place among the facts of language. Okay, so in order to identify what role linguistic structure plays within the totality of language, we must consider the individual act of speech and trace what takes place in the speech circuit. Okay, now we are going to hear this Ferdinand de Saussure is going to propose a speech circuit. Okay, why do we need a speech circuit? Okay, we have to study the individual act of speech in order to identify what role the linguistic structure plays within the totality of language. For that, we have to consider the individual act of speech and trace what takes place in speech circuits. Here, we should know what is speech circuit. Okay, this act requires at least two individuals. Speech circuit requires at least two individuals. Okay, within this minimum, the circuit would not be complete. Without this minimum, without this minimum, the circuit would not be complete. Suppose then we have two people, A and B, talking to each other. Let us suppose there are two people, A and B, talking to each other. Try to understand this experiment carefully. This small experiment carefully. Okay, the starting point of the circuit is in the brain of the individual. That is, for instance, A. Okay, at A, in the brain of A, okay, the circuit starts. Let us suppose. Okay, uh, the where facts of consciousness, which we shall call concepts. Okay, these facts of consciousness we call the facts of we call concepts that are associated with the representations of linguistic signs or sound patterns. Okay, in this A, in the brain of A, these concepts are associated with the representations of linguistic signs or sound patterns by means of which they may be expressed. Okay, when there is a particular concept in the brain of the speaker, in the brain of A, okay, those concepts are associated with the representations of linguistic signs or sound patterns by means of which they may be expressed. Okay, we may use those sound patterns or those sound patterns or linguistic signs to represent these concepts. Okay, this is what happening in the brain of the speaker, that is A. Let us suppose that a given concept triggers in the brain a corresponding sound pattern. Okay, this concept triggers in the brain a corresponding sound pattern. Okay, when there is a particular concept, that particular concept may trigger the sound pattern, corresponding sound pattern, or corresponding linguistic sign. Okay, this is an entirely psychological phenomenon. This is an entirely psychological phenomenon, right? When there is a particular triggering of the concept in the brain, a corresponding sound pattern. Okay, when an idea or a concept triggers a sound pattern, this total activity or this total phenomena we may consider as psychological phenomena, followed followed in turn by a physiological process. Okay, this psychological process, or we can say the triggering of the concept by using a sound pattern or phonation, we can say it is followed by a physiological process. It is followed by a physiological process. The brain transmits to the organs of phonation an impulse corresponding to the pattern. Okay, a pattern, when a sound pattern is triggered, then that sound pattern, okay, activate, or it may transmit to the organs of the phonation an impulse. An impulse may be triggered. Okay, an impulse may be activated. That is impulse. That is a phonation corresponding to the pattern. Okay, the sound pattern may activate or may produce an impulse corresponding to this particular sound pattern, so that our organs of speech may respond to produce that sound, may respond to produce or to transmit that sound to the hearer, that is a listener, we can say. Okay, so then sound waves are sent from A's mouth to B's mouth. Here we should understand the sound waves are sent from A's mouth to B's mouth, a purely physical process. When once that particular sound pattern is sent from our mouth to the ear of the hearer, then it may travel in the air. That is a channel, we can say. Okay, it may travel through a channel. In that channel, it is entirely physical process. It is entirely physical process. Then this phonation may reach the ear of the listener. May reach the ear of the listener. Next, the circuit continues in B in the opposite order. Okay, now the circuit continues in the brain in B in opposite order from ear to the brain. Okay, from ear to the brain. Then the physiological transmission of the sound pattern. Okay, when the sound pattern travels, okay, it may another process may be done. That is from ear to the brain of the listener. There is another process from the ear. When he receives that sound wave, he may hear. When he receives that sound wave, his brain, it should go to the brain of the listener. It should go to the brain, to the B. Then this process, this transmission from ear to the brain in B is called physiological transmission. This is called physiological transmission of the sound pattern. Okay, phonation and hearing. These two will turn into again the concept. Again the concept, right? So in the brain, the psychological association of the pattern with the corresponding concept. Okay, again there may be the psychological association of the concept with the corresponding concept psychological association of the sound pattern with the corresponding concept. Okay, this sound pattern brought along with it a concept. That concept may be associated in the brain. This process is again psychological process. In this way, this is a speech circuit, we can say. This is a speech circuit that is explained by this Ferdinand de Saussure. Okay, if B speaks in turn, this new act will pursue from his brain to A. Yes, exactly the same course as the first, passing through the same successive phrases, which we may represent as follows. Okay, so again, when this B starts to speak something, then again new circuit may be started. New circuit may be started. This analysis makes no claim to be complete. Even this analysis is no claim, this analysis makes no claim to be complete. One could go on to distinguish the auditory sensation itself, the identification of that sensation with the latent sound pattern, the patterns of the muscular movement associated with the phonation, and so on. So this analysis makes no claim to be complete. One could go on to distinguish the auditory sensations, the auditory sensation itself, the identification of that sensation with the latent sound pattern, the patterns of the muscular movement associated with the phonation, and so on. Many things we have to find, not simply this triggering of concept by using a sound pattern is not enough, and receiving that sound pattern and transmitting that sound pattern into a concept. It is not enough. Even our muscular movements, how these muscular movements may respond to the sound pattern, and how these muscular movements may produce, or how organs of speech may produce these phonetic sounds, and how this muscular movement, the ear or the our eyes may identify these muscular movements in association with the phonation. In association with the phonation. That's why more clearly we have to think for few more ideologies right now. So schematization enables us. This schematization enables us straight away to separate the parts which are physical, that is sound waves, from those which are physiological, that is a phonation and hearing, and those which are psychological, that is the sound patterns of the words and the concepts. Okay, these are the points we have to analyze. These are the points we have to separate, right? So for now, we have to separate them into three parts: physical, that is sound waves, from those which are physiological in the sense phonation and hearing, and those which are psychological in the sense the sound patterns of words and the concepts. This is what happening in our brain when we speak something. Okay, the word patterns are psychological, just as the concepts are associated with them are. Okay, now the circuit, as here represented, may be further divided into the external part, that is sound vibrations passing from mouth to ear, that may pass in the air. Sound vibrations passing from mouth to ear, and an internal part comprising all the rest. Internal part comprising all the rest. Now we are going to distinguish two parts. One is external part, another one internal part. Okay, what is this external part? The sound waves. External part are the sound vibrations passing from our mouth to the listener's ear. Okay, suppose your ear, the sounds from passing from mouth of A to the ear of the B. Yeah, another is into a psychological and a non-psychological part. Into a psychological and non-psychological part. The latter comprising both the physiological facts localized in the organs and the physical facts and external to the individual. Okay, so this another classification, that is psychological and non-psychological. Okay, when it is in our brain, if it is related to our brain, then if it is a process which may happen in our brain, that is psychological. If it comes out along with our concepts, along with our ideas, that is non-psychological. Okay, that may include both physiological and physical facts, physiological facts and physical facts. Okay, a third point, into an active part and a passive part, into an active part and a passive part. The former comprising everything which goes from the association center of one individual to the ear of the other. Okay, so the active part is in the speaker's brain, or it is in the part of the speaker's brain. So the circuit can be divided into an external part and internal part, a psychological part and non-psychological part, and third one an active part and passive part. Okay, so the former, that is active part, comprising everything which goes from the association center of one individual and to the ear of the other, and the latter, that is passive part, okay, comprises everything which goes from an individual's ear to his own association center. Where is the association center? It is in the brain. Okay, from the brain to the ear of the speaker, ear of the listener. From the brain of the speaker to the ear of the listener is active part, and from the from the ear of the bee, that is listener, and to his association center, that is brain, is passive part. Finally, in the psychological part localized in the brain, one may call everything which is active executive. Okay, which is active, we can say executive, and everything which is passive, we can say receptive. Okay, so if it is active, we can say it is executive. If it is passive, we can say it is receptive. Okay, so in addition, one must allow for a faculty of association and coordination which comes into operation as soon as one goes beyond individual science in isolation. It is this faculty which plays the major role in the organization of the language as a system. But in order to understand this role, one must leave the individual act, which is merely language in embryo. Language in embryo. It is the beginning stage of the child. Okay, proceed to consider the social phenomena. Until now, we just consider the individual act of speech, but it is not enough. We have to move to study, we have to move to observe the social phenomena. The social phenomena. Okay, in the next class, we shall discuss that social phenomena, dear students. Okay, until then, be patient and try to read try to watch this video again and again so that you can understand the concepts clearly. Thank you, Onona.